Hey everybody, you know what? The coolest thing about playing a lot of board games is that sometimes I have a really great week. I play some fantastic games, and so I want to share with you 3 great games that I played last week. These are really good games that I am not going to necessarily showcase each one individually, but I'm going to bring them all 3 to you in this video. Let's jump into these games. Now I'm going to start with the shortest, easiest game. It takes about 30 minutes to play and suits 2 to 4 builders. That's right, you are building in this game. It's called Acropolis. Now, this is a game that I got to play at Gen Con and was super excited to get my hands on, like my own copy. And since then, we've played it several times. And the more and more I play it, the more I hone my strategy. And yes, this is a straightforward game of building tiles and finding multipliers or plazas to multiply with those locations. But it's so good. Like, I have such a good time with it. So players are going to build their own area, but they're going to draft. There's this open drafting mechanism, much like in Century Spice Road, where each round you actually have all these tiles out here, and they come in 3Bs. They're like a tile that has 3 hexes on it. And if you want to purchase one, you just take the edge one, or you can pay to take something further inside, and you have to pay a stone, which is a little cube that you have. And those are resources that you can gain throughout the game. Now, I really like that because it's not a closed circuit. I usually talk about Canvas being a closed circuit. You have those painter palettes. And you only have a certain number in the game, so if you use them up and you're not getting them from taking tiles that have that on there or cards, you're not going to get them. But in this game, in Acropolis, you can gain them by placing tiles on top of query tiles. And those are the hexes that are just the kind of gray-white. And you're building, and that gives you the stone you need to then pay for the tiles that you're looking for. It's a really cool mechanism, and I like it a lot. Now, what are you doing in this game? Like, why you build for, purple or red or yellow or green or blue? Okay, so each one of these 5 different building types wants a certain configuration inside of your city because you're building this beautiful city with different levels. So, for example, the blue is the houses. This is kind of like your residential district, and people like to live near each other. So you're going to build up one kind of giant connected blue region, and you hopefully can multiply each one of those tiles with those stars inside of the blue plaza. And if your blue tile is on the 2nd level, that tile for that blue hex is going to be worth 2 points. And if you can build anything on the 3rd level, that particular tile is now valued at 3 points. And so it's really cool how you're building up, but when you build up, you are covering up things underneath it, hopefully just the query, because that's going to give you the stone you need. But if you're covering up other colored tiles or plazas, you're not going to be able to score those at the end of the game. If you have any houses that are not connected to your largest neighborhood group, they're not going to count. You just get to count the one single largest collection of blue tiles or houses in your district at the end of the game. And merchants, on the other hand, those are the yellow tiles. They don't want to be next to each other. There's too much competition for selling their goods. And so you're going to earn points for every isolated yellow tile that doesn't touch another yellow tile. And they could be anywhere on any level. Of course, if it's on level 1, value 1, level 2, value 2, and so forth. So markets function almost in the opposite way that the neighborhood houses do. Barracks are the red tiles, and they want to be on the outer edge of your city, of your district, because they want to protect everybody. And they can be touching each other, it doesn't matter. They can be on any level. Of course, the value goes up the higher they get, but they want to be on the perimeter. They want to be on the edge. And if you have a barracks inside the city, it just doesn't count. So you want those reds to be on the edge. The temples are purple and they want to be inside the city. They want to be surrounded fully by all these other places, by the people and by the markets, and they want to be surrounded by the barracks and any other thing that they can. So if they're on the edge, they're not going to count, but if you fully surround them on all 6 sides, you're going to be able to score those purple tiles or the temples. And lastly, there's parks. Parks are the green tiles, and they can go anywhere and be anywhere and touch anything, and they just want to be happy. That's all they get to do. They can be wherever they want, so there's no restrictions or parameters or requirements for placing those green tiles out. So of course, the trick behind this is making sure that you're assessing how many of these particular tiles am I going to get that are the locations, and how much am I going to be able to multiply it times the stars inside of those plazas that match the color. Because you're not going to really score anything if you don't have any stars, and the stars are really important. And that's the thing I've learned after my many plays of this game, is that you've got to focus. You can't do all 5. You can score all 5, but you really need to have 1 or 2 of the 5 different districts or 5 different types of tiles in your area, in your city, to score. And you want to have big multipliers, because that's where it's going to ramp up. And you want to be able to build up so that you can get higher payout for the tiles that are on level 2 and perhaps even on level 3. This is such a cool, clean, fun, fast strategy puzzle game with a player area that you are building up your own, very own city that's wholly unique and super, super interesting. Plus, since everything is open information, you can always see how many stone cubes other players have, which means that you can tell how far back they can go in the selection order. You can also tell how many points they have every single second of the game. You can look and say, well, they're really going for this, and if they want to multiply this, they're going to want to take that tile, which means I can probably sneak by and take this tile because they're not going to want it. So there's a lot of strategizing when it's not your turn, and I really, really like that. And you also just can evaluate how well you're doing versus everyone else. That open information and open drafting is just really, really cool, and it just makes turns fast. The other thing that's really cool about this is on your turn, if you're first player, which passes every round, you will take one, it will go around the table, and you will be able to take another one at the end of your turn. And that's so awesome. I love that feature. It's just cool. You feel like on your turn, you get first and more, and it's true. But then, of course, when it's not your turn, you see the other person take first and more, and you're like, no, that's unfair. But it just feels really good when it's your turn. So I think this game just makes you feel good. It's super replayable. It's beautiful. I love the kind of puzzly tile nature of it, and I like how it gets 3D. And I like how it feels like you're actually building a real city. There's just enough to sink your teeth into, a lovely 30-minute game, and this was one of the great games I played last week. All right, moving on to my next game. These next 2 games are pretty comparable in length and complexity and time. And so I'm just going to put one first because I think it probably takes a little bit less time than the box states, and the other game I think takes exactly the amount on the box. So this next game is a city game as well. While you're not necessarily building tiles and building a city in front of you, players are jumping into Paris. Yes, Paris. And this, again, really, really cool game. The box actually states 90 minutes. I think it takes between 60 and 90 minutes to play, depending on how many players you have. It does suit 2 to 4, and there is an expansion out for this already, but I just got to play this the first time at Gen Con, and I was taught the game by a lovely individual despite having already purchased the game. We just hadn't had a chance to play it yet, and it seemed intimidating to get into, but it's not. It's really, really not. The game board builds in front of you, and you see this big cityscape of Paris with all these different boroughs. And it's just lovely. There's the Arc de Triomphe in the center. And so you have these wonderful images and locations and names. So you feel like you're just living in this city. And I think that the turns in this game are so fast and easy to just do, maneuver, and then you're planning while it's other players' turns. I think it's just a really good, fast game. It feels fast when you play it. and players are really just running all the way through until they get to the end where you just essentially run out of money and you run out of actions. And once that happens, play is over and you're going to score up. And the cool thing about this, I found, is that the scoring mid-game is important, but there's also a hefty end game scoring that might take you by surprise and might bring a player who appears to be out of it back into it. And I really, really like that there's that balance between getting those points while you're playing the game, but really investing in the end game scoring. So in this game, players are investing in real estate in the early 1900s in Paris. And on your turn, you are simply going to look at 3 stacks of face-down tiles that have just the location on the top. So you get half information. You know what region it's going to go to, but you don't know what the number is underneath it. And that's important because the number underneath it is where you place that particular tile. So you take one of those 3, you flip it over and just place it where it belongs on the board. There is a space for every single tile that you flip over. Now, you don't have to do anything with that tile if you don't want to, and I think that's actually the really cool thing. You're revealing a tile and putting it on the board, but then on your turn, what you can do is place one of your figures, one of your workers, into a key to the city in those regions. You can place it either in the Arc de Triomphe for no money, or you can place it into one of those named boroughs for the amount of coin that it states on the board. And you can do that. That's your whole action, is placing a worker into a key space. Or you can take your worker that's already in a key space and place it into one of the numbered tiles in that borough. And then you get to do the thing that's on the tile. Of course, you have to pay to get in there, but it gives you a chance to do something. It gives you a resource, which is really important because those resources are going to allow you to do things like invest in even more cooler, better real estate opportunities. But it might also give you a chance to move on the space that's around the board. There's this perimeter around the board that you move along, and you have to move along always going forward. You're never allowed to go back. So you can move as far along the track as you want, trying to eat up things that other players may want, but they want other basic things that come before it, because again, you can never go back. So you can move forward on that track and then take the thing underneath it. And if there's only one tile, you get the tile and nobody else gets that tile. There might be a chance for you to get one of 2 or 3 tiles that are there, depending on the amount of players, and that's okay too. But you take a unique opportunity and it's just cool. It's just so cool. I love it. I think it's just the smartest, neatest thing because, again, it's what your pace is. Do you want to move fast? Do you want to go further down the track and then just kind of get stopped at the end and say, well, I can't really do this anymore? Or do you want to just pace and plod your way along, grabbing up all the resources as you go, getting opportunities and getting really cool things? So this game is fast. Players draw a tile, place it, and then put a worker somewhere. And then your turn is over. And it's just this really tight game of resource management, investing in really cool real estate, because at the end of the game, you are going to receive points for each borough in which you have the majority investment in. And that's super, super important. You want to have the most points towards an area to earn victory points. And not only that, players are picking the amount of victory points that they're going to earn for each of those regions. These little victory point tiles have a different payout for first, second, and third. And as soon as a district has 4 keys in an area, that active player will place out one of those victory point tiles and put whatever they want in that zone. So they may want to set it up for them to get it. They may realize that someone else is ahead and put a lesser value on the first place position, but more on the second place, which is what they think they're going to receive. So there's so much really cool strategy. And this is, again, a fast, fun, very it's like condensed. It's a very tight game. There's really very little room for wiggling around and making mistakes. I think this is just a really cool game. I like how tight it is. It makes a lot of sense. It has wonderful theme, and I love the components. Yes, I did get the deluxe. I think it's the deluxe version, so I have like all the really cool insets and dividers and really nice pieces and stuff. But the base game, even if you just get the base game, it is a good, clean, smart, clever game. And I just think it's worth your time. I'm surprised it took me so long to get to this game, but I'm really glad I got my hands on it at Gen Con and then got it back out on the table between Gen Con and now to share with you. This is, yet again, another great game that I played last week. And now for the last game I played last week that I really enjoyed. I have to tell you, I wanted to play this at Gen Con. I saw it in a glass display case and I said, that one, I want to play that one. And I just didn't get a chance to do it, but now I have it, and I have to tell you, there are lots of things I really enjoy about Northgard, Uncharted Lands. Yes! This is essentially a 4X game that incorporates a deck builder in a really cool way. So players are going to be in charge of a clan that they send out to explore new tiles. So this is a tile exploration where the map is just going to build in front of you and you're just going to continue exploring all these different places with building opportunities, small and big, maybe encountering some creatures if you add the creature module, which after a play or two you probably should. And there are just opportunities to get resources from the land that just are there, like an apple tree or getting some wood and, basic resources like that. So this game has that exploration with tiles, but your clan also comes with 3 unique cards that you get to add to your basic player deck that gives you all those basic actions, like build or harvest or explore or things like that, where it's just, basic things that everybody's decks do. Now, if you get a particular clan, you have to earn the 2 bonus cards by paying lore, and those are just another one of the basic 3 resources in the game. But the clans are so cool. The clan abilities are amazing, and I think that they just give you some edge in the game that other players don't have, and I like that slight asymmetrical start. Now, the other cool thing is that when a player is done playing, you go one at a time. I play a card from my hand, then it goes to the next player. They play a card from their hand, and so forth. So everything you do essentially has a card action that's associated with it to some degree. You will then be out of cards and you'll quit. You'll quit for the round. You'll say, I'm done, I'm out, I pass. You will then get to take one of the open display flipped cards before everyone else. You take one and you add it to the top of your deck and you get to keep that card, and that card goes in your deck and you play with it for the rest of the game. It might have victory points, it might have a cool action, it may have an immediate action that allows you to play even more than one action on your turn. Whatever it is, it's amazing. They're all so cool. These cards are just so fun. That's how you build your deck, round by round by round. You add these cards into your deck and they let you do really cool things. So the thing I like the most about this is just those development cards. There are kind of basic ones that you start with in the first couple rounds, and then you have more advanced ones that allow you to do even cooler things. Now, what are players actually going for? It could be one of 2 things. That's the cool thing about this. The game can end in one of 2 different ways. It can go all the way to round 7 and end where players will score up all their victory points that they've earned throughout the game for doing a variety of things, completing regions, for scoring them at the end of rounds, for building really cool buildings that give them more victory points, and victory points on their cards. That's another way to get victory points. Now that's kind of like that. Here's the game. This is the way it was kind of built. But there's another way to trigger the end of the game in which one player would win automatically in the game. And I think this is the thing you've really got to pay attention to, because it is not easy to do. But when you see a player moving toward this end, you must stop them, because this is a high interactive player game. So when a player has closed off a region with dotted lines, they have ownership of it because they have their warrior figures inside of it, and they've also built a large building. That is one of 3 requirements to win the game. If they can do that 3 different times, meaning they've got a whole region closed off with a large building built inside of it, another one over here, and then yet another one over here, that triggers the end of the game and they win and players don't score up their victory points. So you have to really pay attention to players and their regions and essentially combating that, because a big part of the game is battle. You need to go and fight your foes for their resources, for their previously built buildings, which stay there once you take over their land. And so there is this really kind of interactive push and pull of, when can I go and attack my opponent when I think I can maintain that location and gain the benefits at the start of the next round when we start getting all the cool resources and stuff, and even at the end of the round. So I think that that is just another feature to keep in mind as the two possible ways to end the game. I also really appreciate that there is a slight bit of luck and chance involved in battles. For the most part, what you move into a zone is 1 point per person. Your opponent, 1 point per person. You can add apples for each person and make it 2 points. So if you have a really healthy warrior eating an apple, they're really strong, they're going to give you 2 points of value towards battle. But then each player is going to roll one single die, and the die has one of two images on it, or both of them, which is the axe symbol and then the skull symbol. And the axes help you gain more of the value of your number of fight power. And then the skull essentially kills or removes one of the warriors of your opponent in that space in the battle. And so if you still have warriors remaining and you have the highest number, you win. Your opponents will flee and they will retreat back to neutral or friendly spaces, and then you will have control of that region. So I think that it's really interesting that there's this die roll that might change, might not change. It just alters things just by a little bit. So it's not just all core raw numbers. And I think that kind of reminds me a lot of what I enjoy with cube towers, with games like Shogun or Wallenstein, where you move in your troops' cubes and you take their cubes and then you drop them all in the cube tower, and then whatever comes out is the result of the army. So there might be some remaining, they might not all come out, and I think that adds just a little bit of excitement. I do enjoy that. I do like that a lot. But I really think that the heart of this game is the exploration. I think there's a lot of interesting battle to be had, and I just love the development cards and the actions that you get to take on your turn. I think it just is fun. It makes sense. Your turns are really quite fast, and I find that this game is just really immersive with the imagery, the cards, just the feel of it. It feels just very Northgard, Uncharted Lands. So I think that the replayability is incredibly high with Northgard because of those development cards and the clan cards and abilities that go with players. And every time you play, you are not going to reveal the same lands and the same features. And so I think the games are going to differ radically, and player choices are going to affect what happens if players are not necessarily battling a lot, or you've got the creatures as part of your module. Maybe you're fighting more of the creatures and defending your lands against the wolves and the bears and things like that instead of playing against the players. That's going to change things. And maybe you're drawing the tiles that don't allow you to build the large buildings, which allows you to trigger the end of the game early. So now you're scoring up victory points. So there's just a lot of ways this game can go. It's consistent, it's clear, it's interesting, it's fun, and I also think it's a really, really beautiful replayable game. So this was the third great game that I played last week. All right, folks, that's it for me. Thanks for joining me for 3 great games that I played last week. I hope you just got a feel for them. You got to look at it and just understand the mechanics, and definitely check out what I think makes those games really fun and replayable. Well, I will see you next time. Bye, everybody.